Peace, family. It's your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. Welcome to the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel. Big news coming out of Cambridge, Massachusetts today. Harvard's president, Harvard's first Black president, Dr. Claudine Gay, has resigned from her position at Harvard University as president. This is a big deal. As many of you know, for the last month, President Gay, along with President McGill over at Penn, have been under extraordinary pressure. Last month, President McGill resigned from Penn, and now Claudine Gay has resigned. This all started, as many of you know, after the congressional hearings by a House subcommittee on education, work, etc., and they asked her about campus climate. They asked how the respective Ivy League universities would deal with the question of political unrest on campus, specifically as it pertained to Jewish students. This hearing was about anti-Semitism on college campuses. And Claudine Gay was asked a series of questions, as was Liz McGill, as was the president of MIT as well. All of them gave their respective answers, and for whatever reason, those answers were deemed insufficient. We'll get into what she actually said and why that's problematic. But I want to be very clear that this is not about plagiarism, which is what she ultimately was forced to resign for. This is ultimately about the question of Israel and Palestine. This is ultimately about how she responded in that congressional hearing. And so we saw the first Black woman ever positioned as president of Harvard forced to resign because of a political witch hunt. We're going to get into the plagiarism allegation. We're going to talk about it. And we're going to get into what actually happened at that congressional hearing, because all of that is important. But let's be very clear. This is not about plagiarism. That said, I want you to know that when President Gay resigned, she made a statement. And I'm going to read just a little bit of that statement to you, because I think it's important to understand how she is describing what happened, how she is engaging what happened, how she is dealing with this question. Okay? So Claudine Gay said, "It is with a heavy heart, but a deep love for Harvard that I write to share that I will be stepping down as president. This is not a decision I came to easily. Indeed, it has been difficult beyond words, because I've looked forward to working with so many of you to advance the commitment to academic excellence that has propelled this great university across centuries. But after consultation with members of the corporation, it has become clear that it is in the best interest of Harvard for me to resign so that our community can navigate this moment of extraordinary challenge with a focus on the institution rather than any individual." Let's be very clear. That means I met with the bosses in the Harvard Corporation is a big deal. It's one of the most influential boards, one of the most influential corporations in not just the world, but maybe in human history. And they said that it's in my best interest to resign. That means she didn't resign on her own. She resigned because of what was going on. I'm going to read just a little bit. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but I want to read just a little bit more. She said, "Amidst all of this, it has been distressing to have doubt cast on my commitments to confronting hate and to upholding scholarly rigor, two bedrock values that are fundamental to who I am, and frightening to be subjected to personal attacks and threats fueled by racial animus." She said, "Look, I'm tired of people saying, or I'm disappointed that people have said that I'm anti-Semitic, and I'm frustrated that people say that I'm not a legitimate scholar," because those are the two critiques that came. And she said that many of the attacks have been fueled by racial animus, by racism. That's what she's saying. And so she gives a whole speech. She talks about the new semester, about her hope and her love of Harvard. She talks about the fact that she's going to stay on the faculty. But ultimately, this is a story about a woman who was forced to resign from her position because of what happened in a congressional hearing about anti-Semitism. Now, some of you might say, well, how do you know? You can't say that. That's your projection. Well, let me jump to the words of somebody who very actively and adamantly championed her firing. Somebody who's a student at Harvard, who very clearly advocated her firing and very clearly celebrated her firing. I'm going to tell you what she said. I'm going to bring this up. It's courtesy of Fox News or Fox Business, excuse me. Check this out and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Listen to this.
This point, let this be a lesson to all those that are watching. Number one, don't mess with Jews. We're done with anti-Semitism. We're done with the crap. We're done with taking all of the hate and negativity and discrimination that we faced for hundreds of years, and certainly since October 7th. It's done. You come for us, we are going to strike back twice as hard. The second reaction I have is, let this be a lesson for higher education. Let's make learning about learning again. Let's stop with this political theater. Let's stop with this social activism. Let's stop with this focus on race and ethnicity and identity. Let's talk about intellectual diversity. And I hope that this day, January 2nd, moving onwards, can be a day where we can take into account the fact that learning matters, education matters, and taking a stand against hate and anti-Semitism also matters.
So that's pretty clear. That ain't conjecture. He's saying very clearly that her firing is the result of how she dealt with Jewish students, how she dealt with anti-Semitism on campus. Now, this is important. And let me say one more thing here, because I don't want there to be any confusion and I don't want there to be any anti-Semitism in my comments. This is not a Jewish conspiracy. I don't want any anti-Semitic theories being trafficked. I don't want this to be any talks of cabals of power or any of these other things that are anti-Semitic tropes. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is how anti-Semitism is being weaponized when it should really be about how people have the right on college campuses to protest the state of Israel, how people have a right to critique Israeli government practices, how people have a right to challenge Zionism, how people have a right to fight for Palestinian freedom and self-determination and dignity and justice. That's what this is about. That's what this should be about. Hit the like button if you understand what I'm saying, if you agree with what I'm saying. This is not about castigating Jewish people. This is about saying we have a right to freedom of speech. And so in the congressional hearing, Elise Stefanik, the congresswoman from New York, asked them how the university would deal with questions of harassment. And they said, well, if it rises to action, we'll deal with it. They also said, what if students call for genocide? She said, it depends on context. Let's be clear. Let me stipulate a couple of things. One, all three of the presidents answered the question poorly. I think they had the right spirit, but they answered the question poorly because they created space for people to have doubt, fear, anger, and willful misunderstanding. What the presidents were attempting to say was, yes, if people do something to harass Jewish students or any students, we'll deal with it. But we also have to create room for political disagreement. And so the reason why context matters when the question of genocide, it's because the reason why context matters is because for some people saying river to the sea is anti-Semitic. For others, it's a call for Palestinian freedom. For some, saying intifada is a call for Palestinian uprising and resistance. For others, it's a call of Judenrein or Judenhass. And so there has to be room on a college campus for competing interpretations. But what they didn't want to do is be backed into a rhetorical corner. So they say, oh, we oppose genocide. And then they say, well, these 10 Palestinian students at River to the Sea, now you got to kick them out of school. And the presidents might say, no, we need free speech. So this becomes the debate. This becomes the terrain of struggle. They were attempting to do it, but what they did was give a very abstract, distant, ambiguous, gray academic answer that made it look like they were indifferent to Jewish students suffering. Now, I happen to know as a fact, 1,000%, that Liz McGill at Penn and Claudine Gay at Harvard do not hate Jewish students, that they don't want to protect Jewish students, that they aren't outraged and disgusted by anti-Semitism. I'm sure they both are, and I'm sure the president of MIT is too. I don't know her though, so I can't speak as passionately about that. but all of them are speaking out in a way that makes sense to them. But they did a poor job. But then in the aftermath, Liz McGill resigns because there was pressure from the board. Based on my sources, it was the board of the Wharton School, which is, of course, one of the more powerful schools at University of Pennsylvania, because it's the business school and business people are successful. So they leveraged their authority. There was somebody who was going to give a $100 million gift who said, I'm not giving $100 million if she's president. Money talks, BS walks when it comes to universities. So then Claudine Gay gets the support of the Harvard Corporation. And how could she not? They knew that she wasn't anti-Semitic. They knew that she cared about Jewish students. They knew that she wanted to protect everybody. But the moment Harvard announced that she had their support, what happens next? The DEI police pop up. The racist right wing pop up. The affirmative action haters pop up. And they say she is a DEI hire. So it went from a question on Israel-Palestine to a question about her fitness as president by virtue of her identity. And by identity, they mean race. And then you have people like Bill Ackman, people who are alum and part of the Harvard community who very clearly had a racial animus, very clearly had a disagreement based on that. You have people like Ben Shapiro, who's a Harvard alum. You have people like Christopher Rufo, who has a master's from Harvard, I believe, on some like not correspondence program, but some, I would argue, lightweight Harvard degree. But I think he would argue that as well. I don't think I'm saying anything that he wouldn't say. But they decided that she had to go. And now this wasn't about Israel anymore. Israel becomes the pretext for racist white men to go on a witch hunt for Claudine Gay. And then for other people, plagiarism and academic integrity became a pretext to go after Claudine Gay for issues around Zionism. And so she was getting pulled and critiqued from both sides. This is a tough place to be if you are a president. You said Shapiro has a JD from Harvard. I never said that he didn't. And I see, this is where listening helps. NCR 10. You said Shapiro went to Harvard Law School, not extension lightweight. I didn't say otherwise. What I said was Shapiro is an alum of Harvard. And I said Christopher Rufo is also an alum of Harvard, though his degree is from extension. You understand? So let me say it again. Shapiro is an alum. I never said that his was lightweight or anything other than a legitimate Harvard degree. I said Rufo, however, has a different degree, and Rufo would not argue otherwise. Why am I saying that? Because if you read Christopher Rufo's actual work, Christopher Rufo says, I only have an extension degree. Look it up and Google it. You don't have to always be that guy in the room. So let me get back to what I was saying now. So suddenly you got people who say, you know what? It is my commitment. It is my mission. It is my mission to go after Claudine Gay. And so they find plagiarism. They find her dissertation, and in the dissertation, they say that she has some quotes that are unattributed. And they say that she has an appendix in the back of her dissertation, which is a little too derivative of another scholar. And I responded to this. What I saw in her dissertation was sloppy and irresponsible, and certainly meets the textbook standard of plagiarism. I don't disagree with that. However, it was such a minor example and was clearly not done with any venality or malice or maybe even mendacity intended, from what I could see. And so I said, this is a silly reason to fire somebody, especially given the fact that her advisor was the very person they said she was stealing from when it comes to the appendix. So in other words, she wasn't trying to get over. You don't send the advisor his own appendix like he wouldn't notice it. So I don't believe at any point that this was actually an attempt to get over. I think it was bad. And Harvard said, look, we're going to move forward. We're going to let this go. We're good. We're good. We're going to let this go. So they keep going. But Christopher Rufo also kept going. Bill Ackman also kept going. Christopher Rufo's co-author also kept going. So it was clear to me, that Claudine Gay wasn't going to last long at Harvard. Now, again, the congressional hearing was ugly, and she did not perform well ultimately. She did a bad job. I think she would admit that. She did a terrible job. All of them did. But she shouldn't be fired for that. And the dissertation is ugly, but it was a gajillion years ago. I'm sure she finished her PhD before me, and I finished my PhD, although some of y'all think I don't really got one, 19 years ago. I finished my PhD 19 years ago, so she's probably well into 20, between 25 and 30 years on hers. So she's a fully established scholar. So, you know, they're not gonna fire the president of Harvard 6 months into her tenure. It would look bad. She also had the support of alum. She had the support of Black alum, white alum, the Alumni Association, the Black Harvard Association. Everybody was like, we got this sister's back. Let's go. And then more allegations came out. And then more allegation came out. I see your question, Danny. I'm going to answer it. It's a great question. I'm going to answer it. And and now they're saying, well, she had 11 articles, which is not a stunning number of articles to have. It's kind of low, in fact. It's kind of low, in fact. Damaris Tapia, thank you so much for that generous donation. We love you. We appreciate you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And now, of the 11 articles, I'm going to put up the exact number because I don't want y'all to think I'm making this up. I don't want y'all to think that I'm not making this thing up. 11. She's 11 journal articles, no book, in 26 years. 26 years. So she's 7 years past me in the academy. Okay, right. Because I'm working on year 19. She's working on year 26, right? So it became increasingly difficult to defend Claudine Gay. Cave Wall Musings, thank you so much for the generous donation. We appreciate you. RY, thank you so much for the generous donation. We appreciate you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. It became increasingly difficult to support Claudine Gay because when you have 11 articles as a professional scholar, and some people were saying, I think one estimate was 4 of them were plagiarized, someone else said 5 of them were plagiarized. I think the latest charges, according to, and I don't trust the New York Post, but their source said that there were at least 6 new ones and an overall number of 12. You know, there's articles like The Effect of Minority Districts and Minority Representation on Political Participation in California that borrows 4 sentences from David Cannon's 1999 book, Race, Redistricting, and Representation. Now, I've read many of the works in question. And oftentimes, most of the time, what Claudine Gay did was not vicious, nasty form of plagiarism. And let me be clear. with what I mean. She typically would cite the person. What Claudine Gay would do is read John Smith's book. And John Smith would say, the War of 1812 was the most important war in human history. She'd read that from John Smith. And then she'd write, the War of 1812 is the most significant, not important, but significant war in human history. And then she would cite John Smith. So she cited John Smith. So she's not pretending that the idea came from her exclusively, but she's using almost the exact same words. So if you're going to use the almost exact same words, you got to put that in quotes. You have to quote John Smith because that's not your idea and it's not your word and it's not your framing. Or what you could say is many scholars have attributed extraordinary significance to the War of 1812, then put the end note, and then in the discursive notes, right, one of those people is perhaps the most visible voice of that is John Smith, who said, quote, and then quote John Smith. But what you can't do is pretend John Smith ain't saying it. Shout out to you, queued up. I appreciate the love, appreciate the donation. You cannot do that. But there were also cases where she put John Smith in the notes and in the citation, but didn't even put John Smith's name on the sentence about 1812, War of 1812. And so it's textbook plagiarism. Let's be clear about that. Now, did she steal the actual intellectual contribution that she was attempting to make to the field? No. Were her empirical findings, were her data findings, was her research stolen? No. Was the theoretical analysis or the philosophical interpretation jacked from somebody else? No. So if this were like a murder case, you got first degree, second degree, third degree murder. Somebody said this to me earlier today, that this sounded like second degree plagiarism. I would agree. It's second or maybe third degree plagiarism. NCR 10 says, Carol Swain is claiming Claudine Gay plagiarized. She did plagiarize Carol Swain. That's not up for debate. Carol Swain is right. And absolutely, there's no person in the world I would not want. I can't think of anybody who I'd want to be connected to less as a plagiarist. Can you imagine if you found out that somebody who looks at the world the exact opposite way as you is the person who the media is pointing to as the victim of your dishonesty? Ooh, that's tough. So Carol Swain hates DEI. Carol Swain hates affirmative action. Carol Swain hates, sometimes I think she just hates Black people in positions of power. And she gets to say, see, I told y'all, Negroes in power. Look, they don't deserve it. And yes, Carol Swain is Black too. She's a Black woman from the Jim Crow South. Now, in the specific case that I referenced before, Dr. Cynthia Scurry Brooklyn is saying her quote wasn't direct. She changed one word and she did cite it. Yes, changing one word and citing it is not enough. It's not enough. But again, I'm not making I'm not making a different claim than you, I don't think, Dr. Cynthia. I'm saying the same thing. I'm saying it wasn't direct when she changed. I said she changed the word and cited it. I think that's exactly what I said, actually. But the point is, what she did can't be done. So now they have a stack of these nitpicky things, which I don't think reflect who Claudine Gay is as a scholar, who Claudine Gay is as a person, who Claudine Gay is as a leader. But now you got a stack of plagiarism allegations that are legitimate, and you are the president of Harvard. And as the president of any university, you got to oversee plagiarism. You have to decide what to do with students who are accused of plagiarism. You got to decide what to do with faculty who could be sitting in the same seat of accusation that President Gay is right now. So yes, this is a hard one to fight. especially when you only been in 6 months and you already got all this negativity at your back, because universities are corporations. Harvard don't pretend not to be a corporation. And so if you're Harvard and you got a leader who has pissed off significant parts of the donor class, significant parts of the alumni, significant parts of the students, and maybe, just maybe, because of this plagiarism stuff, significant parts of the professor class, right? Now you got all these people, donors, who are mad about DEI. When I said the donor class, I was talking about people who are mad about DEI, affirmative action, and the congressional hearings. You got people who are mad about all kinds of stuff. It's hard to stay president when that many people mad at you, when your job is to not be hated. So they found a way to force her out. But let's be clear. Let's be very clear. They wanted to find out whether Claudine Gay had committed plagiarism. They could have found that out 26 years ago. She got hired as a professor, a tenured professor at Harvard, after being a tenured professor at Stanford. She turned in a whole lot of papers, a whole lot of work. There was every opportunity to closely examine and investigate this system. And they didn't. Because they didn't care. They still don't care. Yes, you can't be a plagiarist as the president. I agree. If I were Harvard, I can't imagine a situation where I could see her being president long-term after this revelation. But I just want to be very clear that the revelation only came because of what happened in Congress. People were mad that she wasn't willing to just concede without resistance the idea that any critique of Israel is unacceptable, that any challenge to Zionism is an act of harassment, that saying the word genocide about Israel is wrong, but being accused of genocide simply because you critique Israel is right. Now, she didn't say all that. She was trying to be tactical. They said, do you affirm Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state? She said, I affirm Israel's right to exist as a state. They didn't like that. When I say they, I'm talking about the people asking the questions. At least Stefanik and them did not like it. According to reports, just came out today, I'm looking at it right now, Dana Goldstein at the New York Times reports that Harvard faced donor pressure and a drop in early admission applications. That means bad for business. Bad for business. All corporations are a business. All universities are corporations, either technically or in practice. So corporations are all trying to protect shareholder wealth. They're all trying to protect their interests. Universities are no different. They saw people applying less and donating less. That is always going to be bad for business. That's always going to make them try to change leadership, y'all. Claudine Gay didn't have a chance. But the real reason is not plagiarism. The real reason is what happened in that congressional hearing. And then after the congressional hearing, people who don't care about Israel, but who care about affirmative action and DEI, use this as their opportunity. They said, look, now we can really prove. Now we can really show that Black people don't deserve this. So they use this as an opportunity to castigate a Black woman and frame her as unworthy. Look at this unworthy Black woman. Couldn't handle herself in the hearing. Couldn't handle herself in academia. She doesn't deserve to be president. We never thought she could be, and now we got proof. This ain't have nothing to do with plagiarism, y'all. Plagiarism became a pretext, and a good one. They didn't find no bullshit now. They They didn't get her for literary. But it has nothing to do fundamentally with and that is why, again, I take you back to the comment that the young man said from Harvard. And I'm gonna play it for y'all one more time, like I did at the beginning, because I think it's important for y'all to hear it twice. Because he, as they say, he laid his game down quite flat, to quote a great philosopher. I'm gonna play it for y'all right now. Listen to this one more time.
Let this be a lesson to all those that are watching. Number one, don't mess with Jews. We're done with anti-Semitism. We're done with the crap. We're done with taking all of the hate and negativity and discrimination that we faced for hundreds of years, and certainly since October 7th. It's done. You come for us, we are going to strike back twice as hard. The second reaction I have is, let this be a lesson for higher education. Let's make learning about learning again. Let's stop with this political theater. Let's stop with this social activism. Let's stop with this focus on race and ethnicity and identity. Let's talk about intellectual diversity. And I hope that this day, January 2nd, moving onwards, can be a day where we can take into account the fact that learning matters, education matters, and taking a stand against hate and anti-Semitism also matters.
So, again, he made 2 points. The first one was, we read her as anti-Semitic, and so we're coming after her. Don't mess with us. And the second thing he said was, no more identity politics. What is he saying? He's saying, stop hiring people because they Black. Stop hiring people because they're women. Stop hiring people because they have a particular identity, and instead hire them not for identity diversity, but intellectual diversity. So again, he's doubling down on both narratives, right? The second one being that this woman was unworthy. That this woman was unworthy. So I said it before, I'm gonna say it again before I leave y'all alone. There are people who got her fired because they care about Zionism and they used plagiarism as the pretext. And then there are people who care about stopping diversity, and they used anti-Semitism as the pretext. But in both cases, people are not dealing squarely. She is being I won't say railroaded, because she actually did the thing that she's accused of, which is plagiarism, but she is being fired because of right-wing attacks, because of racism, and because of the weaponization of anti-Semitism in the service of normalizing and expanding political Zionism. That's what's happening right now. And no matter what anybody tells you, anything else is just a smokescreen. All right, family, I want to thank y'all for listening to me. I hope I broke it down. I got more to say, because tomorrow I'm going to be talking about what Harvard needs to do. It's not enough to say you're going to continue to care about diversity. You need to prove it. I'm going to tell you what Harvard needs to do in my next live, y'all. But for now, hit the like button if you feel what I'm saying. Hit the like button if you want to keep building on this kind of stuff on this channel. That's what we do here. Also, hit the subscribe button. I need y'all to become subscribed members so that y'all can get the updates. Hit that little bell so you can get notifications whenever we getting down over here, because it is important. And then finally, family, hit the join button. Hit that join button. If you hit the join button, it allows you to become part of the MLH family. It allows you to help us invest and build in what we're doing here. Remember, we're building every single week. We got new equipment, new editors, new producers, and of course, new content. We got the Mumia Abu-Jamal podcast. Make sure you check it out. It's called The Classroom in the Cell. We got 8 episodes up right now with me and political prisoner Mumia Abu-Jamal. I'd love for you to listen to it. I'd love for you to check it out. Go on the page and check it out for yourself. Also, family, there's a new video called 5 Myths about Israel and Palestine. Go on the page, check it out, but don't just watch it. Also share it. We want that video to spread because it's a way of defeating lies and myths. It's a way of fighting the lies that prevent the liberation of a free, or the creation of a free and liberated Palestine. So let's tell the truth. Let's spread the word. Let's spread those videos. And of course, feel free to hit that Cash App right here. Of course, YouTube takes its cut out of everything. So if you want to support the platform, if you want to support the channel, you can just hit the Cash App right there. No amount is too small. We take $5, $10, $100, $1 million, a single dollar, or even a food stamp. We take all of it, man, because we're just trying to build the channel and create political education, critical conversation, and an alternative to mainstream corporate media. All right, family. I love y'all. I will see y'all soon. Be safe and peace.